Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 23rd episode of Disability Discrimination Ban Starting Now. I am your host, Lindsay, and in season 2, I really want to focus on some other stuff because in season 1, you heard me talk to actually this next guest's son multiple times. And now in this season, I want to try and talk to people who don't have a limitation and get their thoughts about it and what they think about me doing this podcast. Today, I am joined by Julie Shusko. She is the mother of Samuel Shusko, although you hear me refer him as Sam. Today, I will be talking to her about what it is like to raise a son who has a learning limitation, in Sam's words. Welcome to the show, Ms. Shusko.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm very happy to be here.
I gave a brief introduction to you more about that your son has been on the podcast twice already, but can you tell everyone a little bit more about yourself?
I am from Louisiana. I am was an elementary school teacher for years. I taught 1st through 4th grade. My husband was in the military for 35 years, so I am a military spouse. He retired several years ago, so I have taught in many places in the States and outside of the States. We're living in Houston now, trying to get situated with the civilian life.
So all of the listeners, of course, you've heard me mention this, have heard from Sam a few times. But if there are ever any listeners that haven't listened to the episodes where he is a guest, can you tell them a little bit more about your son?
Sam is the middle child of triplets. He has 2 brothers, one a few minutes younger and one a few minutes older. Sam is a very outgoing person. He loves to talk. He loves music and he loves helping people. He has accomplished quite a lot in his 23 years. He finished college at Beacon, and then he's gone on to graduate school. He's getting his master's in clinical mental health counseling right now. Is where he is now.
So, like you mentioned, your husband was in the military, which means that you guys moved internationally a few times. And I know Japan for sure, but I forgot the other countries that Sam had told me. But because you had to move from country to country, was there any challenges raising Sam, who has a learning difference, when you were moving often?
Being a teacher helped me a lot with that type of situation. And when we moved, we would be associated with the military base, which gave us the DoD schools. And I also taught in DoD schools. So I had a little bit of inside push and pull that I could use. In the States, we moved to several different places, and every state has different rules and regulations and different procedures, and they even call things different names. So it becomes very almost a full-time job for a parent to stay on top of what is happening and the different meetings and the different pushes you have to do to get your child situated in a situation that is best for them.
as you had mentioned, Sam is a triplet,
Yes.
and Alex and John is his other brother's names.
Right.
So when they got older, how did you talk to them, explaining what learning difference that Sam has in a way that they would understand?
It's a very interesting situation when you have triplets. The other two did not have learning or do not have learning differences. Sam does, but they're brothers, and they came up the same age, and they expected Sam to keep up with them, which I believe helped Sam quite a bit. We would talk a lot about when he was all the way growing up, how everybody's different and everybody has different needs, and how some people's needs show more than others, but everybody in the world has needs and differences. So they understood that, and they understood that Sam could, I never put limitations on Sam. I never told him or made him think or feel that he couldn't do things that his brothers could do. But I would explain to his brothers that it might take him a little longer to do them, but that he could do them. And so they would help him a lot of the time in school, doing things at home, riding bikes, anything like that. They would help him quite a bit. And so they grew up understanding that about Sam. So it never has become an issue with them. I mean, to this day, it's the same. They expect him to be able to do things, but they know that it might take him a little more practice to be able to do those things.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
sweet.
it's just it's the way they've always lived. It's nothing. It's normal to them. So it wasn't like having older siblings that you kind of had to explain to. And so I think that helped Sam a lot too, because they didn't give him, a lot of slack. They gave him the time, but they wouldn't give him slack like, I might would, or an older sibling might would. So it was a different situation with them.
Would you say that because you were going to the military bases, I think in the international countries you lived in, that kind of helped Sam transition?
I really do. I think it did. And he learned very early to transition and how to do that, how to make friends, how to fit in, how to just be outgoing and meet people. It helped having, two people in your same grade automatically that you knew, and you could have lunch with them, and it helped all three of them. That helped all three of them. But they also were going into situations in the Dodd school system where students come and go. We did move to some places in the States where it wasn't that way, and people had been in the same school for years and years and had group cliques, and that was a little harder to fit in than necessarily the overseas, because the overseas schools were more open, the students were, to meeting people and making friends, because they had all were in the same situation.
So, have you learned anything from Sam watching him excel despite his learning difference?
I have, and having been a teacher before I had them and after I had them, I learned that students with learning differences have so much to give, and they can express, they can do anything anybody else can do, but just in a different way. And they can accomplish anything anyone else can do, just they go about it differently, and you have to allow them to have that freedom to go about things in the way that makes sense to them.
Your son and I both attended Beacon.
Mhm.
I was one grade ahead of him. What do you think of Beacon? And if there is a parent listening that is considering having their child apply to Beacon, as a parent, what would you say?
I would say that one of the hardest things I've ever done in my whole life was to leave Sam at Beacon College. It was so hard.
I think that would be hard for any parents because I think my parents struggled
Yeah.
with
Yes.
the fact they were leaving their youngest at college.
Yeah, it was very hard. Um, but I had to trust that they had his back. I had to trust that he had a net. I had to trust that. So I did. I thought I've got to give him this chance to excel. And he did. And they were there for him. And he met wonderful people like you, Lindsay, and he's got friends. He's having lunch with another friend from Beacon today, as a matter of fact. So he has wonderful friends that he made. He excelled. It was hard. It was very hard. He had to learn to, live in the dorm. He had to learn to, without
Basically live on his own.
live on his own. And it was actually very good for me as well, because I couldn't step in. I couldn't, which was in the Beacon, they ask you not to step in, to let them do it themselves. And so I did. Not that if he called and needed my help, of course, I talked to him and that kind of thing. But he figured it out, and he's excelled great. He did great in the classes, and he learned so much. But the thing that I'm happiest about that he got from Beacon was self-reliance. He can rely on himself, which is a wonderful thing.
He was also laser focused in class. Of
Yeah.
course, when I was with him, we would talk about the class often, and then one thing he did say in one of the episodes to the parents, like, really go and research Beacon. I mean, Beacon was the only opportunity I had to get a bachelor's degree because other people were essentially, before we found Beacon, I was told that I was not smart enough to attend college, and the best I could do is for minimum wage. But Beacon will help you prove those people's wrong.
Exactly. There's so many students there that have been told so many things like that. And as a parent, I never listened to those things. I always let Sam achieve what he wanted to achieve. I never, ever felt like he couldn't. So I think, and Beacon is the same way. They don't hold anybody back. They don't let anybody think that they could not do it. But the student has to do it themselves, but they get the opportunity, which a lot of these students have not had before, I feel.
Yeah. And also, when you're a new student, it's a foreign world that you're in when you first get there, because you've had, or I've had, and Sam probably has had so many doubters. Oh, you can't do this. You can't go and get a master's degree in clinical mental health. It's like, no, yes, we can. Just watch us.
Right. Exactly.
So I ask this question in every episode that interview that I do. So when I was researching doing this topic, I had noticed I researched on like Apple Podcasts where you can actually listen to this. I just typed in disability discrimination and nothing like what I'm talking about is out there. And if there is, they're not really updating. So, why do you think that is? Why do you think people are scared to have the conversation?
I don't know if they're scared or if it just has never occurred to them um, that the discrimination is unfair, that these people are capable of anything, going to graduate school, helping other people, accomplishing many, many things. So I don't know if it's an intentional thing or if they're trying to be discriminatory, or if they just don't realize that it's a wrong assumption that people with learning disabilities cannot do certain things. So that's more what I think it is. I don't think it's people are mean. People are just trying to keep people from being able to do things. I don't think they realize. And I think what you're doing is wonderful, Lindsay, because you're putting a light on the accomplishments that can be achieved by people that have learning differences.
Yeah, and one thing I remember too, like I remember a little bit about my elementary school time, but I really think that besides the parents talking to their children about it, the school system will probably need to do something to really put it in their heads, because one of the things Sam and I both said in our last episode is, what kind of support system do they have, and what are those people saying to them?
Right. In the elementary school system, or
At any age.
junior high, high school, all of
Yeah.
that. Right. And I would always, I'm trying to think of at what point. I remember in middle school, so it must have started in middle school. Sam would be in the when we would have the meetings, the IEP meetings and things like that. He would be in because it was about him, and we would always start with just me, and then we'd bring him in to have the meetings. But then when we got to high school, it was he would be in all those meetings, and before school he would go by. When he was like a freshman, maybe sophomore, I'd go with him. He'd make an appointment with all his teachers before school started, and he would bring in his IEP, and we would sit there and he would go over his IEP with all of his teachers before school even started every year. And I think that was very important for him because he learned to self-advocate for himself. He learned that this is, what he needed. And if he had these things, he could accomplish what he needed to accomplish. So that, parents can lead that a lot. Parents can make more of that kind of thing happen, so that the school or the people involved in the IEP, it's more of a personal contact. It's not just a mom sitting there talking about their child. If the child is actually there, then it's more real.
So what do you think the world can learn from people with learning differences, like your son?
It's unlimited what they can learn. I mean, they can learn acceptance, they can learn that everybody, like I always told my boys, everybody's different. Everybody has a difference in some way. And some differences are more accepted than other differences, but all differences need to be accepted, and limits don't need to be put on people.
So there are probably young parents like right now or in the future that will find out their child has a learning difference, if not any other disability. What advice would you give them as they're kind of navigating this new part into their life?
I would tell them as early as possible to start getting help for their child. We started Sam before he was 2 with speech therapy, all kinds of anything you can get therapy, push and push. A lot of the school systems have programs for children, starting at 2 years old, that don't cost anything, that you can get your child into. And don't accept limitations that people tell you for your child. Let your child tell you their limitations. Let them try whatever they can, and maybe try it 20 times. If they want it, let them keep trying for it. I try to never discourage. I probably may have, parents are not perfect, and that's another thing. You're not going to be perfect, but you just have to go with your gut and keep going forward. Just keep stepping forward.
So, last question. Is there anything you would say to your younger self?
Not to worry so much. Worry takes up a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. Do your best, do what you think is right, and move on, and just keep going forward. If that doesn't work, try something else and just keep going forward, but don't worry and don't regret, because if you tried it, it didn't work. It's okay. That won't work. So you move on to something else. That would be the main thing.
Well, Miss Shusko, thank you so much for coming on. And I hope you guys have not only learned a little bit more about Sam, but can really heard from a parent's perspective of having a child with a learning difference. Because I can tell you, I did learn a little bit more about Sam than I already knew. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I really enjoyed it.
And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.